This is Unit 4 for my Introduction to Marketing series, which is a full semester class. This unit is all about advertising strategy and consumer behavior. The essential question, this is what I hope my students can answer by the end of this unit, is how do businesses use advertising and psychology to influence customer decisions? The objective is that students will be able to analyze how advertising strategies, emotional appeals, and consumer behavior influence purchasing decisions and brand perception. All of my units do come with a teacher guide throughout the entire semester. This is approximately 5 days, but could likely stretch out longer depending on how much work time you give your students in class. Worth noting also, this does have a worksheet component as well as a technology requirement for creating a flyer. If your students don't have access to one-to-one technology, then substitute in a hand-drawn component for the flyer that students would manipulate on their own. Moving on. Here we go. Always some kind of an introductory, anticipatory set or hook, if you will. Why did you click? Getting students to think about why do you click on something if you are on the internet, if you're on your phone or your computer. Think about the last TikTok, YouTube short, Instagram reel, advertisement, thumbnail, influencer post that grabbed your attention immediately. And why did it work? Why did you click? Why did you stop on that particular post or information or advertisement to learn more about it? Was it the colors? Was it the picture? Was it the way that it moved on the screen? There's something about it that got your attention. And companies are doing this left and right, regardless of whether or not you're attentive to it. Companies fight for your attention. They compete to stop your scrolling, get your click, make you curious, influence your decisions, and convince you to buy. It's all about persuasion, and that's what marketing is. Advertisements are designed to make you feel something, some kind of a trigger. Maybe it's excitement or fear or curiosity, happiness, belonging, trust, urgency, nostalgia. Which one of these emotions works best on you? Think about that advertisement that you stopped and clicked on. Not every single ad uses that same emotion. It depends on the type of business or product or service that it is that you're considering. Which one works best on you? All of my units do have guided notes that accompany the slides so that students, while we are going through the instruction, have something that they can work on to keep them actively engaged so that they don't drift off. And because it is something that is learning applicable to where it's not them just receiving information, they're able to synthesize and do something with it. As well as worth noting that I allow my students to use their guided notes upon completion on the quiz that's included with the unit as well. Not every advertisement uses that same emotion. Different audiences, different emotions have different goals. For example, maybe you have a luxury product or a motivational type of product to push you to be better, or something where it scares you. You don't want to be driving in the rain with tires that don't have appropriate grip. Or maybe it's just something that's funny that catches your eye because of humor. It grabs your attention. Or something that's heartfelt, maybe an aging pet at home or something else that tugs at your heartstrings. Which one works best on you? We do a quick activity here where students need to think like marketers. They choose the right emotional appeal for the right customer. I have them look at the following images. There's 3 images that we'll do, so 3 next slides. And each one of these people will be a different target consumer, target market. And so they need to think about what would make each person stop scrolling. On the following 3 slides, they will analyze 3 different consumers, customer one, customer two, customer three, as a table group or individually, depending on how you want to do this. I will have students think for 30 seconds completely quietly, then they'll pair up or partner up if it's a bigger group than just pairs, and then share out their responses. While they're pairing up and sharing out their information, I walk around the room, I listen for things that I hear that are beneficial to the conversation, and I'll sometimes actually give a student a heads up and ask them, hey, do you mind sharing that out? That's really something that I think would add value to our conversation. So I have them get ready to explain their choice and defend their reasoning. Slide one. Jordan. Jordan is 17 years old, and he is a high school senior. He's competitive, ambitious. He cares about his image. Behaviorally, he follows fitness influencers, spends hours on TikTok, and buys trending products. Geographically, he lives in a suburban area. Which emotions would stop the scroll for Jordan and why? I always put the and why so it's not just belonging. Instead, it might be belonging because, and then they would fill in their response for that. And then without going into too much detail, then we switch it up. We go over to Maria. Maria is 38 years old. We note that Maria has a full-time job and is a parent of two. So her needs are going to be different than that of Jordan. And then we switch over to Tyler. Tyler is 16 years old, similar in age demographic as our first person, Jordan, but he has different interests. He has other things going on in his world. Once we shift away from that conversation, we switch over to the emotional appeals. And this would typically start the second day of the class. So emotional appeals, marketers use emotions to influence your thoughts, feelings, and decisions. as I go through these next emotional appeals, and there's quite a few of them, I don't necessarily stop on every single one and make it a think, pair, share. That would get monotonous and just a little bit redundant. But I want them to think about each of these different emotions and how companies are using these to advertise to them specifically, but also just the general population of who their target market is. So, belonging. People often buy products to feel accepted, included, or connected to others. Maybe because this is the first slide, I would have them think about and discuss, why do people want products that their friends already have? Well, it's usually going to be like, hey, my friend has these Nike Air Force Ones. I probably should get these too. Or my friend has AirPods. Maybe they'll make me not feel cool if I have, the knockoff Amazon brand, or I need to have an iPhone because I can't have the Android. Fill in the blank, whatever it might be. Excitement, fear, urgency, pride or status, confidence, luxury or status, and nostalgia. These emotional appeals are now going to lead us into our decision making, because the way that these emotions tug at our heartstrings or our brain or just general physical well-being is going to help us determine some of the decisions that we ultimately make. And those decisions are the general idea of behavioral economics. And so I have my students watch this quick video from Crash Course Economics. As they watch, I have them think about, why do people make irrational purchases or emotional purchases? How do emotions influence their decisions? And how can marketers use this information to persuade consumers to purchase their product or service? We then define rational versus emotional decision making. People make purchasing decisions from different perspectives for different reasons. So, emotional purchases, these are driven by feelings based on identity, excitement, desire, influenced by appearance and trends, or often impulsive. Versus rational, you need these things. Maybe it's your groceries or utilities or shoes, fill in the blank. Driven by logic, focus on quality and reliability, compare prices and features, you consider practicality and long term value, planned and deliberate. Most purchases use both emotional and rational factors, but we can break these out, and we want to start thinking about marketers and how they tug on your heartstrings and your intellect to see if they can persuade you into making the purchase. We define what a rational purchase is with a little bit more depth. It's based on logic, usefulness, price, or long term value. So you've got your price, practicality, reliability, and long term value. These are often researched and carefully compared before buying. And in my terms, being a millennial, I say this is a big screen type of a purchase. I know it sounds silly, but if I'm making a big purchase, I can almost never do it off of a cell phone. I'm always doing it on my computer because I feel like I have more control over it. It makes it more rational for me. Then we switch over to a slide like this, where students have to identify with a group or individually which of these are emotional versus rational types of purchases, or are they kind of a combination of both? Gasoline for your car. Well, maybe it's a rational purchase because you're using it to and from work, but maybe it also could be a emotional purchase if, for example, you're buying race fuel for your race car, or maybe you're buying gasoline for a long extended impromptu spontaneous type of a trip, and you didn't really necessarily factor in that you had to add gas to the equation. It's rational because you need it, but it's emotional because you didn't need the vacation. So this could potentially be both. Groceries, obviously rational. Concert tickets. We could argue that these could be rational in the sense of your mental well being, but in large, they are emotional. And the list goes on and on. Do customers always buy emotionally? Not necessarily, but we want to have that conversation. It's more than coffee, it's your people. That's one of those type of marketing slogans that a coffee company might want to use to persuade you to be making that purchase. And with this concept and with the idea of all of the emotions and whatnot that we put into this, I have my students now make an emotional appeal promotional flyer. I tell them what the design requirements are, the emotional appeal options. It doesn't have to hit all of them. In fact, just one is sufficient. I recommend using Canva's flyer maker. It's linked to this slide and also in the notes of the slide deck. And then I tell them what their task is. I show them an example of what would be sufficient. Obviously, this is kind of a little bit more of an upper scale type of an example, but they could totally create something like this using Canva. From advertisements to algorithms, all the students know what the word algorithm is, but do they necessarily understand how it works? The algorithm of whatever social media or other type of software that they are using is effectively, it's a if this then that. And so as a result, why your feed feels so personal is a result of your usage. my feed of social media looks significantly different than that of my students and significantly different than that of my wife's. I mean, my wife and I, we have some similarities, but for the most part, we have some differences because there's different interests. And the platforms will track what we watch, what we click, what we search, what we like, how long do we pause and stop and look at something. For me specifically, I'm really interested in home repair and Labrador retrievers and dogs. I'm interested in cars. I'm interested in weightlifting and other things like that, versus a student that might have no interest in any of those things. Social media platforms use the algorithms of what we spend our time consuming to decide what we see. When the algorithm shows me content and advertisements designed to keep my attention, that's the algorithm working its process. So businesses use this information to target specific audiences with advertisements and contents. We close out this unit with a worksheet activity called Build My Algorithm. It is front and back sided, and students have to predict what the algorithm would show, and they go through a whole different host of different ideas about how an algorithm could apply in various situations. They're given a mission to analyze the profile, predict the feed, and then think like the algorithm. The more a platform learns about someone, the more personalized the content becomes. Thank you for checking out this resource. There are many more of these on my YouTube channel as well as my social media channels under Business Teachers Toolkit on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as YouTube, where you've probably found this information. I appreciate you for teaching the most valuable class on campus, and so do your students. Thanks.